Hi, I'm Stella Soleil, and I was talking about how I left Los Angeles and moved to Des Moines, Iowa. First of all, I have to say that it was culture shock. The difference between LA and Des Moines, Iowa is might as well be different planets. Um, they were laughing at me because where I was shown where I was going to be living, I'm like, so how many parking permits do we get? And they're like, parking permits? The whole street, because in LA it's so hard to find parking. And in Des Moines, you can park pretty much anywhere. You can park on the grass, and no one's going to bother you. So, anyway, I met the bandmates, and I liked everyone right away. I mean, these guys were so sweet and uh, passionate. They were so passionate, and they really, really, really believed in this project. So, and they had been rehearsing for months before they got a lead singer. And so they booked a show a week after I got there. I hadn't even written hardly any lyrics to they had a full set like of 10 songs, and no lyrics, no melodies, and they're like, we have a show in a week, you got a week to figure this all out. Well, of course you can't do that in a week. So our first show, I played with them. I just stood on stage and made up all the lyrics and all the melodies, and just said to myself, if I believe it, it's real. And I have no idea what I sang about, and I have no idea how it sounded, but I mean, the crowd seemed to love it, and you jump around a lot, you swing your hair around, and people don't really pay attention if it's gibberish that you're singing, because it was gibberish. I mean, like, I did not have a single lyric written for any of these songs. So, but Sophia was there, and Sophia said it was great, and so we knew that we were onto something. That this group of musicians, honestly, it was the first time in my life that I had to work my ass off to keep up with them. They were so talented and they were so gifted, and I was like, shit, I can't just I was so used to getting on stage, doing my thing, kind of like blowing everyone else off the stage, all focus pulled on me, and I was like used to that. Not in this band. This band, every single person was like a star. So, and it was rock. So the drummer, who I got extremely close to, I loved him like a brother. And it was really more his brainchild than anyone else's. He started the band, and he was like, Stella, you have to be more fierce than anybody on stage, because you're being compared to these male singer in metal bands, and you're a girl, and I hate to say this, but you're not taken seriously. And so that means you have to prove everybody wrong that you are the most fierce out of all of them, that you take the biggest risks and you're the most dangerous. This started the long series of broken bones, sprained ankles. I mean, I was writing with them. I was writing the best lyrics of my life. I mean, I was so hyper focused and just so driven, and I believed so much in this band, and it was great. We were great. We won over every single audience we played in front of, and I, having to be the most dangerous, fierce person on the stage, would literally do stage diving. The barricade would be like 10 feet away, and I would run as fast as I can and leap over the barricade and then smash my shins on the barricade. Just barely make it over, smash my shins on the barricade, and just welts and bruises. And I jumped many times into the drum kit. I mean, I destroyed the drummer's drum kit. I jumped in and I'm like, well, I'm going to pull a Kurt Cobain, and I'm going to be even more intense than Kurt Cobain. And like, I would jump into the drum kit and it would be like a explosion, and there would be sitting the drummer on the stool, and he would just be like, thanks a lot, because he had no drums to play because I would destroy them, and broke fingers, wrists, you name it. I had so many broken bones. I always had an injury, and you know, I just chucked it up to punk rock. You know, what punk rocker doesn't have a broken something, you know? And I remember, we were getting a lot of buzz, and we wrote this song. It was a smash hit. It was a smash hit. It was called Hello, and every single part of that song was a hook. The drum was a hook. The drums were a hook. The bass was a hook. The guitar was a hook. The Hammond organs were hooks. The vocal were hooks. It was just a culmination of the biggest giant hooks you could ever think of. It would get in your head, and you could not get this song out of your head. And we got so much attention, and eventually we did sign a record deal with The End Records, and they were independent label, but they had major distribution through Sony. So are they a major? Are they independent? They're both, you know. And I really liked that label a lot. It was a stark difference from Universal. I mean, these guys at The End Records really cared about the music. They were obsessed with the music. And it was such a great experience working with them, and to be taken seriously, and to not be told what to do, and you know, not to be controlled, and to actually have the freedom to be as free of an artist as I wanted to be, as we all wanted to be, you know. So then we started touring, and we didn't have money for an actual tour bus. So we bought a 1970s Winnebago, the small ones, and we traveled around, and this thing broke down constantly, and we went on a month-long tour, and we kept running out of gas, and we couldn't figure out what. We just filled the gas tank up, and we kept running out of gas, and we couldn't figure out what is the problem. And as it turns out, the little young, I guess, assistant, or I wouldn't actually call him a tour manager because he really didn't know anything about tour managing. He was more of an assistant to the band. So in this Winnebago, there's a water tank and there's a gas tank. And he kept filling up the water tank with gas. So So then we would be touring and everybody would be getting these like blistering headaches because of these gas fumes. Like anywhere you were in the Winnebago, you could just smell gas everywhere, you know? And we could not figure out why why were we smelling so much gas and why were we getting like migraines, you know? Well, it turns out because the gas was not in the gas tank, it was in the water tank. so so basically the Winnebago completely broke down, and we how did we get home? I think we flew home. The assistant drove the Winnebago home, and I believe we flew home after that month-long tour. Um, that's just some of the funny stuff that happened with that band. Um, then we went to New York to shoot the music video. So we had there was kind of a struggle in the band, not with the bandmates, but with the direction of the band, because we had on one side this smash hit called Hello that could break alternative radio, that could break top 40 radio. It was a crossover record. It was brilliant. And then on this other side were, you know, the metal musicians in the band that didn't want to be considered like a pop rock band. So there was this like struggle in the writing, you know. We didn't, I know what I wanted to be. I wanted to go in the direction of the pop rock band because I felt like that was the best that we ever sounded. But we did write this song called Professional Hit, and the closest thing I could think of was it sounded a lot like Rage Against the Machine with a girl singer. And I think this was the fatal flaw. As there always is a fatal flaw in bands and record labels. They decide. I didn't decide this. The rest of the band decided that hard rock song Professional Hit would be the first single, and that we would make a video out of it. And I mean, it was a great song, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't a first single. I don't believe it was a first single. And so we went to New York, and it was a grueling video shoot. We were so exhausted. By the end of this video, I literally collapsed, and I was so overly exhausted. I was laying on the ground, collapsed with my hand on my head, and that actually stayed in the video. You could see it. I was like literally had a mental breakdown, and but the video was. I thought the video was great, but it just wasn't strong enough, as strong of a song as Hello. And that's where we made our big mistake, because nobody really cared about Professional Hits. You know, there were very few records. I think we sold 14,000 records tops, and you know, that's not very good numbers. And you know, we eventually got dropped, but before we got dropped, we did do a European tour, which was so much fun, except for the ferry ride. So the drummer, who was very experienced and was in a big band that I'm not going to mention. You could probably figure it out, but I'm just not going to mention it. But he was in a very big band and had a lot of experience, and a lot of experience with ferries. And I could tell by his reaction that he did not want to go on this ferry. It was the ferry that took you from from basically England to Ireland. We had shows in Dublin, and so we were taking a ferry across the English Channel. Well, the English Channel is kind of notorious for being extremely rocky, choppy, just, very turbulent waters. And I thought I was going to get on this ferry, and because we were all sleep deprived, and I thought that we were going to get on this ferry and we were all going to fall asleep. Well, what wound up happening was the ferry was so awful. It would literally, like, the waves would bring this ferry like way up in the air and then smash down, and way up in the air and smash down. And of course, everybody was getting seasick. And so I ran to the bathroom, and every single stall was filled with the woman puking their guts up. People puking in the sink, people puking in garbage cans, and yeah, that was that was my experience with the ferry to Dublin. And so we got no sleep. We were completely sleep deprived and sick to our stomachs. But we played Dublin, and it was a good show. And then we came back on the ferry, and we played, I remember specifically this show in Bristol. The drummer and I had this shtick where at the end of the set, I would grab a drumstick, and I would hit his giant cymbal 23 times. It was, and I was wild. Like, my hair was wild. It wasn't hitting the cymbal. It was like trying to destroy the cymbal. And I would hit and hit and hit and hit. And then all of a sudden I turned my wrist over to hit the drum kit, and to hit the cymbal, and I hit the cymbal, and something felt weird with my thumb, but I couldn't, so I kept hitting the cymbal until we get to 23, but then my shoes started slipping on the stage, and I'm like, what's wet on the stage, and so we got off stage, and I looked down, and blood was just pouring out of my thumb. I mean, it was just pouring. And what I was slipping on stage was all the blood that had poured out of me on the stage. And so we went to the emergency room in Bristol, and it was really funny because the nail had completely turned sideways and was sticking out horizontal of my thumb, and it needed to be removed. And so the doctor took this giant needle of anesthesia and stuck it into my thumb and through the bone. And I wasn't really freaked out by it, but my bandmates literally almost passed out when they were watching this. They were filming it, and one of the bandmates like got dizzy, and he had to sit down because my thumb with the anesthesia it ballooned out to like this big. And the doctor, after the anesthesia started working, he just ripped the nail right out of my thumb and bandaged it up, and I had a huge bandage, and for the rest of the tour I had to wear this big giant like splint bandage on my thumb. So there were lots of stories like that where I was always getting hurt. And but then the most amazing thing happened. I don't know if you're too young to know about this, but there was a festival. It was a really um, it was a really well-known festival called Warped Tour, Vans Warped Tour, and we got picked to be on Vans Warped Tour. There's 70 bands on Vans Warped Tour, and so we went on that tour. Before we went on that tour, I played a show, and uh, I played a show in Des Moines. We were getting ready for the Warped Tour, and the show was over, and I went to go down a dark hallway to try and find the dressing room. And as I walked down the dark hallway, I went straight down because the dark hallway was actually a staircase, and I fell down an entire staircase and broke my ankle and broke two of my ribs just a couple weeks before we were supposed to leave for Warped Tour. So I wound up doing Warped Tour on crutches with two broken ribs. And it was the most painful thing I had ever done in my life. And then there was this one episode where I was on stage on my crutches with all my broken bones, and I was trying to get the microphone off of the microphone stand, and I kept pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, and all of a sudden the microphone came off the microphone stand and smacked me in the nose, and I broke my nose on stage. And if you know anything about breaking your nose, it goes black. You can't see anything. So I literally finished the set with black vision, broken nose, and I couldn't tell if I was facing the drummer or the audience. I had no idea which way I was facing. Luckily, I was facing the audience, but I mean, it could have just as easily been the drummer. So, I mean, at that point, I was like, that's it. I am done. I am 40 years old. I have had enough touring. This sucks. I quit. And that was basically at the end of Warped Tour, I had retired from music altogether. And I did a few things here and there. Like I did with Gino Leonardo, I did a track for, what was that series called? That vampire series with Kate Beckinsale. Oh my God, I can't remember. It was a vampire series. It was a big, big movie, and The Awakening, something like that. And so I did a song with him for that movie. I got paid $300, and I did a few things here and there just because I'm an artist and I can't really completely stop. But, you know, I didn't really, I was in kind of a bad shape, at that time. And it was at this point that I met my future husband. And, I was down. I was really low. I was depressed. And, you know, this one day, he just grabbed my hand and he said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Am I ready for what?" He says, "Are you ready to start living?" And this was like the light bulb went off. And I was like, oh my God. I don't think I've ever lived a day in my life. I think I was just trying to get somewhere and survive. but I don't think I really even know what living means, you know? And my husband and I, you know, started living together and doing things that couples do together. And like he taught me how to snowboard, and we would go on vacations, and we would go hiking, and it was happiness, you know. It was happiness, and it was at this time that I realized, like, oh my god, I had it all wrong. It's not about fame, it's not about money, it's none of that. It's not even about success. it's it's really just about, it's not about what you have in your life. It's about who you have in your life that truly matters. And I I just embrace this, and for, you know, like 10 years my husband and I just lived, and we had fun, and he and I did music together, and he's a DJ, and he's really, really cool. And you know, we would go snowboarding, and we would go on lazy trips, and we had two little dogs, as you've seen in this documentary. And we have a life. We have a real life, and our little family. And this this is the most important thing in life. This I realize that this is the meaning of life. Happiness. This is the real meaning of life. Finding the people that matter in your life. That is the true essence of life. Nothing else matters. I mean, everything else is temporary. There's this great movie, this Frank Capra movie. John Barrymore's in it, and Jimmy Stewart, and it's one of my favorite movies. It's called "You Can't Take It With You," and the bottom line is, everything that you do on Earth, you can't take it with you. But the one thing that you can take with you when you die is love. And so my husband and I got married, and I found true love, and it's remained the same. And I love my husband, and he's basically my best friend, and all I really want to do is hang out with him. And then the pandemic happened, and I got bored, and I started writing music again, and I was like, I'm gonna write an album. So that's basically where I'm at now. I'm writing a new album, but with a different perspective on life. I would never do anything to jeopardize my marriage or my relationships or anything that is the most important thing in life. And I can just make music for the rest of my life, and it doesn't even matter if I get fame, or none of that matters. None of that matters. And I just want to put out my art, and that's where I am at now.